in one way, shape, or form probably for 12 years. And I think the progress or lack thereof in the last year is in part a function of the fact that I simply don't have the bandwidth or energy and frankly skill set to move this project forward in the way it needs to. So I am going to step back, as I wrote in my email a few days ago, I want to step back from the chair role. And I think it's high time. Frankly, I probably should have done it some time ago, but it is what it is. It's subject to committee vote, but Paul and I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago. I approached him simply because, my conversations with him in the past year, it seemed that he has, the skill set, as do all of you, but also the sheer amount of bandwidth to bring to bear and the contacts to bring to bear in the world of transportation engineering at Mass DOT that I think would, serve this project well and give us at least, a shot of getting part one, namely the corridor acquisition, over the finish line and teed up to move forward. So I am stepping back, and this is obviously open to discussion and vote, but that would be my proposal, that Paul take on the chair role.
Sure you want to do this, Paul?
Hopefully my wife's not watching this. He used the B word, bandwidth. I do have availability, but I also do have contacts that I've made over the years, particularly with Mass DOT as well as Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. So I think there are some parallels that I could take on with working with this group, as well as some of the agencies that we have to deal with to move forward. I know there's a lot that still needs to be done, and I look forward if I do get voted in. I have to talk with Mike and just some of the background procedures and things that have been done today, which I'm not really 100% know the history in terms of the way decisions have been made and directions we've taken as a group. So I either rely on you or Mike to help me with that if that happens. So.
What's the problem with that?
Second.
So I need actually guidance from somebody with committee experience. I don't know what is the proper process for Nita Bale and the new chair to get elected by the committee?
Historically, on other committees and commissions I've been on, it's usually they reorganize at the fiscal year, which of course we didn't meet in that change of fiscal year time frame. So, but at those, it's just simply a vote of the committee to elect their own officers.
And the former chair has to bring in cash.
Well, I was about to tell you, the wire will hit your account.
There's a salary or something there.
Well, there's a performance bonus on the back.
There's a coffee stipend there.
So should we properly be re-electing all our officers? Okay,
We could.
okay,
I don't know that
keep
we.
it simple.
Yeah.
I nominate Paul, I'm going to nominate Paul Friedel as chair of the Greenway Committee.
Second that.
Okay.
Third.
Okay, all in favor of Paul assuming the chair role?
Aye.
Aye. You can vote.
Oh, I can vote.
Yep.
Aye.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Sucker. Somebody got to say.
It was law enforcement that said that.
Look, I think, so, can I speak for a minute?
Sure.
So, I mean, we're all kind of picking on Paul. for being a sucker, but
This
it's,
being recorded.
it's fine. I don't
He's
care.
being a
Nobody's gonna watch
sporting
it.
sucker.
Look, when we left off a year ago, we were actually poised to get this acquisition done. We had and still have a letter of intent. We had and still have our, phase one review. We still have the engineering study of the bridges and culverts. But we had and no longer have Representative Peter Kokop among us. And that, I think that, plus other massive turnover in our delegation, has just set us way, way back.
Now, Ed Gibson was going to get more involved in this. Did he do anything in the past year?
Very little. I'm going to talk about it in a minute. But I think, based on what I'm hearing and seeing, I still, this acquisition is very much within the realm of possibility. It just really, it requires somebody on this committee to have, a chair of this committee to have more juice. And I'm just frankly a piss poor job of pushing this along. I've nudged Ed a few times over the course of the year, but it's going to take more than nudging Ed. Ed, either because of his bandwidth issues or because he doesn't care, has not been a forceful, he makes the right noises in our phone calls, but not a lot's happened. So again, it's sort of that experience, realizing just I don't have the juice to push that along and do what's needed, that I thought it was really time to pass on to Paul. But I think, again, with the right pushing, it's absolutely within our grasp. So along those lines, sort of, Paul, can we tag team? Can I just talk about money a little bit? So on the money side, again, the obstacle, we're still trying to find 340 grand. There are a couple avenues open to us. Again, hitherto, Peter Kokop was going to look under a rock and find 340,000. Peter Kokop passed. The state then passed, and the governor signed an $850,000 bond bill, environmental bond bill, including an $850,000 earmark for construction of a Southampton Greenway. Among other things, I've been waiting for 10 months for Ed to get a clear answer to two questions. Okay? This is a sign of how effective Ed's been on our behalf. Question one, whether that $850,000 earmark actually made it into the final bond bill that was signed. Question two, whether that $850,000 can be used in part for corridor acquisition. Okay? Ed has finally got me an answer that, oh yes, the 850 did make it into the final bond bill. But he's not gotten me an answer about whether it can be used for corridor acquisition. And when I spoke to him just today, he said we need to lobby through our legislators to see if we can free up those funds and allow some of those to be dedicated to acquisition. That is what I'm reading between the lines, that maybe it's a matter of how you interpret the word construction. Okay?
Sure.
That's money part one. Or option A. Okay, is an
Certainly
effort
when you
to
go for a construction loan, it tends to include land.
So that's option A for money. Option B is Craig De La Pena finally did something really helpful. If you'll turn to I gave you an enclosure with the word Senate up top. Two state legislatures, whose names I've of course forgotten, have filed
Eldridge and Gentile.
a bill that, if passed, would permit CPC funds to be used specifically, allow CPC funds to be used for acquisition of rail corridors, including in rail banking situations. Okay, if you recall, that's been a big holdup for us because rail banking implies a right of reversion to the railroad. And this bill,
Versus fee simple or whatever.
this bill, if passed, would eliminate that obstacle and make our lives much, much easier.
So this is being presented, but we don't know when, right?
Yes. So the recommendation, and I have no quibble with, from Ed on the one hand and Craig De La Pena on the other, is that we lobby. And, at the barest minimum, right, excuse me, that this committee and the select board send letters to our legislators about both matters. And, with the usual ritual follow-up phone call. And that also we figure out how to involve the railroad in sending a letter as well to our legislators advocating for this, just to make sure they're on board.
Any idea if the railroad is still on board?
Nope, nothing. There's been no communication from them. Like, where are you guys? Are you still alive?
They scare me the most of all, they do.
It's, it's what it is. We need to
Well, the
re-engage.
issue there is turnover. We worked with Mike Renicky for years, he left.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah, is his replacement still there?
No, we're two replacements
right away.
down.
Yeah.
So, excuse me. So, again, I would propose that we, figure out who, we need somebody to spearhead getting a couple of letters written to our representatives and possibly follow-up phone calls. And working with Ed to make sure the select board does the same.
So these letters, are you envisioning them coming from municipal entities within Southampton as well as?
Greenway Select Board, at the very least. And the railroad, Greenway Select Board, and ideally the railroad. And I assume the letters, go to send them to Sabados and Humison. Comments or reactions?
Wished I'd known yesterday, I could ask Don if we can use it for acquisition or not. The bond bill, that is.
I understand. Not too late.
Met with it, well, yeah, yeah, no doubt. Just happened to have met with him yesterday, so. Another matter.
Who's to catch you doing it?
Doing what? I just didn't know to ask.
No, what I mean is,
Oh.
it seems to me that construction was probably a word chosen very loosely and insensitively to its
Right,
context.
right.
I mean, I have every reason to suppose that we needn't even kick up any worry about that particular perceived hurdle.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be very surprised if the spirit and intent of the thing were different from the general design, do, buy, build, fix, paint.
Yeah, I mean, certainly other conversations I've had with him about it, it's the missing, our section of trail is the missing link. Let's make it happen. I was even back when Knappich was still senator.
It's a name I haven't heard in a while.
So I will, as part of my penance for a year of insufficient action, I will offer to deal with that. Somebody up. Draft, yes, it's either one or two letters. I'm not sure. I assume we should fold these issues into one letter.
Yeah.
And I'll also, run it by Ed and ask Ed to do the same with the select board and meet with the select board if necessary. Or, well,
I can reach out to Ed too if you want, whatever you want to do, so.
no, I'm happy to do this. I don't want to just start foisting everything on you. Since you just did the tech form, for example, which we'll get to. So that's the update on money. I don't have a sense of time horizon for that bill. I think I just got
The Senate bill, so.
I just got this from Craig a few days ago, so I don't know. And, I have a contact he gave me some contacts to reach out to get an assessment of its prospects, and I just haven't yet. Okay. That's it for money. Do you want to
Sure,
talk about
sure.
Mass DOT?
So on the Mass DOT front, we have the TEC form that is basically a form that the local MPO looks at to assist them in figuring out where each project that is in front of the various communities, where it stands in terms of if there's been any action, if the budget's changed on the anticipated construction costs, or if anything from the scope has changed. As of last year, nothing's really changed. I mean, we haven't been here since February, I guess, but anyways, the TEC form, I have an electronic copy. I was going to send that out tomorrow to PVPC, who's then going to distribute it to the MPO so they can discuss this project. The lead that this brings us to is consultant selection. I think, just to give you guys a little background with where DOT is and what we need to do. Over the years, there's been a lot of potential projects that have been proposed by various municipalities as a project needs approach to Mass DOT. So we have a project in this part of town that needs state funding or federal funding for various transportation needs, either Greenway, as we're proposing, intersection, or a roadway corridor. So over the years, several municipalities have been approaching DOT, and DOT would vote on these projects, and they would say, okay, Southampton, you guys have a valid project. Your project really improves your project. This is where we actually are today. And we want you guys to move forward in terms of picking a consultant, being able to come up with a design and submit it to DOT. The trick here is, last year DOT actually made a revision to the way that they handle these projects. So for example, if a neighboring community or whatever, whoever submitted a project to DOT and they set a 25% submittal, and they have a subsequent 75, 100, and the final plan, specs, and estimate that goes out to bid. If they don't have a contract with a consultant, DOT is not going to even look at the plan. So this is beyond the 25% level. So for example, let's say we hired a consultant, we would want to have them, from soup to nuts in terms of bringing it through the finish line with DOT. So if we're looking to select a consultant, we would have to look at picking a consultant that is going to bring it from not only the 25% design all the way through the end. And this is something that we would have to do to go forward in order to get on Mass DOT's serious radar in terms of having precedents and having them make a review and go forward with that. So that's something that we need to be doing eventually, is getting a consultant selected. And I know that part of the minutes reminded us today that Ed was going to look at that, but I don't think there's been a whole lot of action on that end.
So the role, remind me, since I suspect these guys understand the process much better than me, the role of this consultant is to
Design. Basically, the consultants, first thing they're going to do is hire a surveyor to lay out the layout of the roadway or the rail bed, as well as property lines and things of that nature. So that's going to be very important. Then the first step after that is providing a general footprint of what the rail is going to be. Is it going to be, or the trail conversion, is it going to be 15 feet wide? How is it going to deal with certain,
So the consultant is the firm that is the design firm?
it's the design firm.
Okay.
Oh, that's better. I guess
Design, permitting and design as well as,
Kind of almost like clerk of the works, so to speak.
it's the engineer of record. So,
Well, that makes it sound like it's not an extra expense item. If you have to have civil engineering on board anyway, as a person or as a firm.
yeah. So, the fact that the town proposed this project to Mass DOT, it's on the town's dime. It's not a DOT project that they proposed. It's something that they would propose, it would be on their dime. So Mass DOT would front the design, consultant fees, and they would be responsible for that. But in this end, we need to select a consultant that's going to basically lay out the proposed improvements.
So, and I probably asked this question a year ago, why would we just, this is my own lack of understanding of the process, why would we even think about engaging a consultant when we don't have a rail corridor yet?
Well, it's something that we need to look at with respect to where we stand in DOT's world. And I guess it's almost like a chicken and egg concept here to think about is, do we start the
Kind of essentially
Start
start
this-
working that parallel to the acquisition, or
Correct.
do it in series where we get the acquisition, then we look at a consultant.
Correct.
Which delays the
the
timeline.
question
Ish.
that I beg is, and this is where I think I need to have a discussion with Rich Massey at District 2, MassDOT, is to talk to him about it and see what his take is on the approach. So do we need to iron out our agreements first and the funding that we have a shortfall for, the rail banking? And where are we gonna get the money for the consultant too? That's the other thing. I mean, for consultant costs, you're looking at least, 12%, 10-12% of your construction. That's a significant cost.
Right. You look at me.
So,
Does that 10-12% for the consultant, is that like a upfront cost retainer type of thing, or?
it's billed on time and materials, so it's however the town wants to write the contract.
Gotcha.
But typically, it's pay as you go, pay as you produce.
Right.
So, you're looking at from a survey standpoint, I mean, that's going to be a significant cost. I don't know what that number's going to be, but
Long skinny tract of land. I can imagine the number of man hours.
well, the problem is and I didn't even talk about this part too, is right-of-way acquisition. So I know we're concerned about the rail banking, which is important, obviously, because if we don't have the main route, what's the purpose?
Right.
There are other issues that we have to deal with DOT from a right-of-way standpoint. One is being basically payment for temporary easements or construction easements or even permanent easements or takings that might be required in order for us to accomplish certain needs of the project. So we're thinking this on a project level as being quite linear from point A to point B, and just need to design something. But DOT, when they get involved, they're going to want us to provide access points in various locations for people to actually get onto the Greenway. And how do you do that? Well, you need to make it somewhat ADA compliant, or you have to make it ADA compliant. And when you start dealing with ADA compliance and elevated routes and just even at crossings where they're not at grade, so when you have a bridge overpass you need to ramp it up. And now, where do you ramp it up? You probably have to ramp it on adjacent properties. So now you're talking about potential land acquisitions that you didn't account for previously. So that's something that I see as a potential hurdle going forward, but we won't know until after there's a consultant on board, DOT looks at the overall scope of the project. Frankly, I don't know what was really looked at prior to me joining in terms of where would we have access points. Obviously the easy approach is Sheldon's, and then at the northern end we have Coleman, right? So.
Yep, and East Street.
East.
Road crossing there.
So that's an at grade, so that one's easy for the most part, but if we provide any other access points along the route, that's when you start getting a little hairy, because now you're proposing switchbacks, so you got to start zigzagging to make ADA grades happen to access the route, depending on
where you try to access it.
where you try to access it. So that's, I don't know if that was discussed before, but that's certainly an issue. And frankly, it is an absolute nightmare, and I'll speak to you as a professional saying this, to deal with the right-of-way group at DOT. Because some of them might not be professionally qualified to be making comments for need of land acquisition versus the design component and the constructability side of things. So I'm not getting too much in the weeds, but these are potential nightmares that I see that could come up at later dates. So I'm going through it right now on some projects where it's a mess, but you have, the funny thing is you have the district that reviews your project, which is, in our case, Northampton, then also goes to Boston. Boston MassDOT has a couple of different groups within the building that actually look at the project from a complete street standpoint, from an ADA standpoint, from, in our case, bridge standpoint, for making any modifications. So there are a lot of different groups that look at it, and sometimes they conflict with what the district wants. So that's another.
The bridge group in particular is very difficult to work with.
Right. Well, the bridge, but anyways.
So, just how do we? I'm just going back to. So, there's no question we need a consultant.
Right.
I mean, I think the
Exactly.
question is, how do we reach a decision about when we need one? And again, is a civil engineering firm even going to look at us when they know that we don't even ever own the right of way yet?
Oh, absolutely.
I guess they don't care as long as we can pay.
As long as you can
They're gonna get
pay.
paid. Yeah, they're
They don't
building
care.
blueprints as long as they get paid for that.
The only component, I should say, DOT right away, I believe, is probably going to be the most concerned about how this, in terms of, do you have the right to be making these improvements along this corridor? That's going to be their concern. Do you have the rights to I don't want to say acquire, to utilize this parcel or parcels? That's going to be their concern. I think what would help us is for me to have a conversation with District 2, Rich Massey, to explain to him where we are and get his opinion in terms of what our next steps should be.
How do we get Mass DOT just to take this project over? So they're the lead, and then they can hire a consultant. Is that even possible? Does that ever happen?
Yeah, but now you're probably looking at another 15 years on top of this. It's not, I'll tell you what DOT is doing now, which I don't know if you guys heard, but the state is doing an in-house design of Route 10, basically from the turnpike in front of your building, all the way up to.
Yeah, I've seen niche engineering doing
Yeah.
surveying all up and down the road.
For the state. So that's a state project, and the most interesting thing is the Mass DOT project manager is the woman that runs the Complete Streets component, and she's pro-bike, pro-rails to trails, pro-greenway, pro-complete streets, which implies that she might propose a multi-use path. I'm thinking out loud, but because I've seen
As
some
part
of her
of that
work.
project,
Yeah, I've seen some of her work over the years and some of her comments, and
it certainly runs parallel to Route 10.
certainly does, which to me implies that there's right of way for that to happen. But I don't know. I'm speculating right now, so
Right away, where along Route 10?
yeah. Width-wise, you have,
Yeah.
you know, and right now I'm looking at it, I mean, at Whitehall. The point being is, the city of Westfield is likely going to have something touching, you know, North Road
Yeah.
within the next 5 years. Does that mean, does it continue further along Route 10 all the way to Sheldon's?
Is that possible for them to get to North Road? Because that's active rail, isn't it?
Where?
Along the rail corridor.
But you're talking right on Route 10.
10.
Oh, Route 10.
Yeah.
So evidently, that means the land is wide enough or the road is narrow enough, take your pick. But there might be enough room for coexistence.
Apparently, yes.
Huh, cool beans.
The only problem with that is, in Southampton, is topography. People aren't gonna,
Well, you don't own the land. I mean, that's where they have walls. You know, I got a project in Shrewsbury right now that has a wall. We're not putting a sidewalk, we're just making some, you know, minor widening, and it resulted in a wall that's going to be 8 feet tall. And Complete Streets, actually this group that is running the show with this potential project on Route 10, asked to have sidewalks put in this area where there's going to be no pedestrians walking, which would, you know, make the wall even wider because you're pushing back the width of the corridor. And you got to chase those grades somewhere. So there is a shift to, you know, to make it happen. So if they need to put up stonemasonry walls along Route 10, they'll do it. It's something to think about. But I digress. So,
do you think this project manager who's into Complete Streets would even consider a rail corridor that isn't necessarily attached to Route 10? Because it sounds like, as part of the Complete Streets, they want a bike lane along Route 10, right?
yeah. I don't think it has potential for DOT to take over anytime soon. And frankly, the way that someone else told me this is that, I know, because other communities had similar questions about non-greenway projects, and the feedback they got from DOT is, well, you have to basically have somebody at the political end in the Senate or in the legislature to really push that to happen. But that takes significant gravitas to do that. So what I think is important, what I want to do is call not only Ed Gibson, but call Rich Massey over District 2 and explain the situation that we have and get his opinion. Because frankly, the last thing I want us to be is when the MPO looks at the list and sees Southampton again, you know, as they did last year, and they don't have any feedback from the district or Pioneer Valley that we're making progress, they're not going to take us seriously.
Right.
And the risk there is for this to be, you know, swept away. And I don't want, you know, obviously, none of us want that to happen. So
I have a question about that. I mean, as of a year ago, we were on the tip sheet for 2019 to 23.
yes,
to the tune of $6 million.
Right,
It's 2019 now.
Yes.
And we still don't own the corridor.
correct.
So are we, realistically, are we simply at risk of losing that money?
Or being punted down to the next few years, because we haven't even engaged a consultant to get us through the process. The fact that, we have all these little steps, no action to them implies that,
The feasibility study doesn't count for anything at this point
no.
anymore.
And frankly, one thing we need to realize is that on a yearly basis, this district, this Pioneer Valley MPO gets 27 million a year. It's not a whole lot of money when you have communities like Springfield, Westfield, other communities, Northampton. I know Northampton's trying to do Main Street over, and that's, they think it's going to cost them $6 million. In reality, that's probably a $10 million project that they're looking at. So, point being is, these projects, these monster projects that are coming across DOT's desk, at the end of the year, they get all these comments that come in, and they start really pumping up the scope and adding features to the project that weren't initially identified. Well, they're going to be looking for money, and they'll see Southampton hasn't been moving, so they'll push us to the back of the line again. So I think this is a critical point for us to...
Yeah, essentially it's kind of anteing up to stay in the game.
Correct. I'll talk to Rich, but he's probably going to tell me, reiterate what I'm saying.
Right. Get someone on board.
Get someone on board. And work in parallel with the rail bank. So, not only am I going to talk to him, I'll talk to Ed, because I know that was an action item.
Yeah, it's a big decision, because conceivably it means going to the town and saying we need money, but to do this, start this project on this corridor that we don't actually own yet.
Well, it's
You
the
don't
thing, the optics on
necessarily
that,
need money to hire a consultant.
I'm sorry, say that again?
You don't necessarily need money to hire a consultant. You can put out an RFQ, get somebody on board, draft a contract, and then just put it on hold until there's funding, right?
Yeah, but DOT's not gonna...
They still want to see funding on top.
They want to see funding. They want to see a commitment
Yeah.
on behalf of the municipality with the consultant that they're gonna take it through to the finish line. That's what they want to see.
yeah, I don't know why it is, and maybe it's changed, or is it a different interpretation now as before, but worked on another project in town, and we couldn't do an RFQ until we got funding, which I thought was backwards, in the sense that, well, if you're doing an RFQ, how do you get funding without
Having a number.
having a number? And you're putting it out there looking to get a number,
But you
you know what I mean?
do your homework, but if you're talking about Westfield,
No, it was in town here.
okay.
It was in town here.
Yeah, some procurement officers in municipalities will say something like that. But at that point, you've already done some legwork. You understand that.
Sure. Yeah, you got estimates and whatnot.
Right. This is what's going to be costing you to do this work.
Sure. I think kind of to Mike's point, the optics of it is probably more difficult to do it in parallel, and the voting citizens of town would be, I think, more than skeptical of hiring a consultant to even just to do the design work on a parcel we don't own.
Right.
Even just looking at town history and whatnot, there's several projects that are on the shelves around here collecting dust that, the design work's bought and paid for And at one point, they were shovel-ready, and they're still sitting there. You know, I'm just thinking, I'm not saying we shouldn't, I'm just saying it could quite likely be a very tough sell to get funding for the consultant.
Well, how long does it
No.
take to write up an RFP or an we're talking
Q,
RFP?
yeah.
RFQ.
RFQ or RFP, whatever you want to do, but, so request for
How long does it take to
proposal.
write something up, solicit proposals, and what's the total cycle time to get to a contract? Put it that way.
So,
2 months, 6 months,
you're probably looking at a couple months.
couple of them. Okay, that's nothing at the rate we move. I mean, I was going to say, if it's a 6-month process or whatever, there's no reason not to just
Well,
start. And we can,
You mean notice to proceed, or are you saying contract? I mean, in terms of selection, 2 months before you select somebody, then you got to deal with the contract negotiations and rates and contract language. That tends to take another month of.
okay, but it's not so long.
Yes.
It's really not that long. I mean, relative to Greenway,
Right, but-
relative to Greenway time.
But
Glacial pace.
here's even another, here's another consideration to make, is that let's plan out, let's think about where we are today. And, we're not going to be able to really start anything in the spring with the consultant. And reality is, are we going to select somebody and they're going to go out there June 1st to start doing a survey? Maybe they'll do the property investigations, things of that nature, but what do we have on trees that's out there in the middle of the summer? It's leaves, obviously, right? So if I'm the consultant in the survey looking at this, I probably want to start, in the fall or sometime when the leaves start falling down, because I might get clean lines and
Right.
be able to
Right on
have.
site.
Right, so if I'm thinking about this from the big picture and just looking at goals, maybe our internal goal is to hire, is to have an RFQ that's finalized, mid-early summer, and then.
That's so a reasonable timeline to keep Mass DOT
Right.
happy.
Right. But like I said, I need to speak with Massey to talk.
Yeah, I get it. It's all
Yeah.
speculative
Yeah.
at this point.
So it's strategy in terms of how do we work it out with DOT and show, more importantly, the decision makers in the project group that we're serious about this. We're not just going to be sitting around, coming to the table.
But certainly RFP, RFQ wise, that other project I worked on, I worked with another consultant in town, there's a town resident that does consulting and whatnot, worked up an RFP, and then Ed reworked it, and that took 3-4 months before he published it,
Right. So let me give you another
for
avenue.
whatever that's worth, timeline wise.
Right.
I'm just,
Right.
kind of supporting the notion of doing an RFQ, because, there's no harm in that.
So let me.
That's us putting those pieces together, and then getting Ed to create it.
So let me make a suggestion, and if you guys want to think about this, but a lot of communities that are similar to Southampton utilize PVPC to generate RFPs, RFQs. They're the ones that actually, set up the framework. We'll tell them what we're looking for in the consultant, and they can assist us in making that happen. So I know Russell was very big on PVPC to help them write off RFQs, RFPs, and some of the neighboring communities as well.
Me personally, I'm not a fan of theirs, just in Concom dealings with them,
Sure.
for whatever that's worth. And like I said, this other RFP, I drew up Ed completely rewrote it.
Right.
So I don't know if we'd be wasting our time, wasting their
This
time,
is-
having them do it.
But
Ed Gibson, I assume.
Yes.
Not Ed Colley.
the thing about PVPC is they've been through this
Yeah.
public procurement process numerous times.
Sure.
And you probably might get a quicker turnaround through them than downstairs. So, obviously Ed's got to bless what, I don't know if he has to, but I guess he would want to.
He is the procurement officer, yeah.
So he would want to bless that, correct?
Yep. And like I said, that's what, what I drew up and had proofed and whatnot, not by PVPC, but
Right,
another consultant, just as a
right,
favor as a citizen, was completely rewritten,
right.
and took months. I mean, granted, he's got a whole lot of other things going on, and it was a
Right,
fairly small project as compared to this.
right, right. I mean, there's many ways to get this accomplished,
Sure.
so.
Just throwing that out there. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
not necessarily opposed to using them, just,
If
it's a thought.
they do it at no fee,
Well, no, that's not the,
there's
that's
a
not the-
charge.
There's a charge,
I don't
yeah.
know how much they charge.
Luckily, my guess, if I was to take a guess for what his fee, probably a couple grand, maybe,
probably.
yeah, 3,000 maybe, if that, on the higher end.
Now, the town does have hours with them
Still,
through every year.
I didn't know if we were still in the compact,
How does that,
whatever that
I
arrangement.
don't know
Translate.
exactly how it works, because there's different pieces, because there was a compact that the Concom had with them,
Right, that we got the land grant done.
but there's also other hours with pieces of PVPC that the town has by paying dues or
right,
something up, separate from the compact was a weird grant thing. Part of my sour taste was through that.
it's
Which
something to think
granted, there
about.
was, yeah, absolutely, and
It's-
there was a whole lot of other pieces to that arrangement that were far less than transparent,
Right.
So I may be placing blame on them, and it's wrongly placed.
I see. Maybe, I don't know how to say this, but I don't know if it's,
I mean, I know that the town certainly has had a relationship with PVPC for decades,
right,
and just how that works, I'm not sure. But there's, as I understand it, there's hours to the town and any of the entities within the town. I
Sure.
think you have to go through Ed and/or the select board to access those hours. So, yeah, I mean, it very well may be something that, there's hours available that they could take on and it not cost.
It's probably worth a conversation with Ed.
Yeah.
To see what he recommends for getting an RFQ on the street.
right. I mean, we're not the only ones that have done similar projects in this area. I know Springfield's looking to do one, and how hard is it to copy and paste? And
Right.
That's what I thought, which essentially is what I did.
Well,
It was not a Greenway project. It was way simpler than that. But yeah, you're right. I mean, Westfield's done them,
yeah, I think we have our understanding of who to talk to. I mean, obviously, Ed is the.
Yeah, he's the procurement officer,
Right.
so.
So. Are we over our time? Wow, 9 minutes over.
Was there anything else?
Well, we have the membership discussion, or on the MassDOT side.
Yeah, on the mascots.
There's nothing.
It's your meeting, I'm sorry.
Yes, so, no, it's okay.
I need to change my habits.
I don't think there's anything else. I know that, I deal with Westfield a lot professionally, and I know some people in town, and they're telling me that there was an individual that, associated with DCR, that gave them the idea that there might be some funds that might be available for Greenway funding. I need to
Big,
get...
DCR has
big,
no...
big funds or smaller funds? Because the Rec Trail Grant Program is, I believe, accepting applications currently.
How do we fall into that?
It's, I want to say up to $50,000 per project or
small
something.
funds.
It's not big money. Yeah, that Rec Trails program, you know? I mean, that would be, to me, that would be something that we could use, one, after it's established for improvements, or even after acquisition to, you know, cut the brush on it, open it up, and start using it as is, so to speak.
Okay, something came, sorry to interrupt, something came over my email not long ago, and I don't remember what the cycle is, but it sounds like they've expanded their commitment, and that there are, in some cases, they will, I mean, typically they're small grants, but it said specifically in some cases, they will go as high as $300,000.
Okay.
Now, it used to be,
Yeah.
it used to be 50,000, it used to be small beer.
Right. Yep. Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't all surprise me that they haven't, like you say, that it is actually the Rec Trail program, and it's got a lot more funding to it than it used to. Because it used to be, it was like, if you had a multi-use trail versus a single-use trail, a bike path, just strictly a bike path, it was like 25% of the allocation. And motorized vehicle was like 25% of the allocation. And then multi-use was the other 50%. So as long as you were multi-use, which way back when, a couple of decades ago, when I first got involved with it, through the snowmobile associations, that's we do the multi-use piece, because oddly enough, even though that's where most of the money was, that's where the fewest applications were. So the competition was a lot lighter versus one of the single-use ones. Yeah, but it very likely has changed, because it did used to be a very simple application, like a two-pager, and it's more involved than that now.
Well, those times are gone.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, certainly DCR has been historically easy to work with. You know, like, here's an application from a project very similar to what you're looking to apply for.
Right. That's all I have on the MassDOT DCR end, I guess.
Do we want to try to run down this DCR thing?
I can certainly, I have opportunities or contacts that I can
Okay.
ring, so I'll look into DCR contacts.
And it's called a RTP, Recreational Trails Program.
But there may be a new program, too.
Right. Or it was called RTP.
You know, RTP still exists, I know it, because I just saw a thing.
Well, they were asking
Maybe
about
in a
us.
Snowmobile magazine, something like that. But DCR certainly could have another program.
Right.
Separate from RTP, that's got bigger funds.
Well, they were asking about us, so
Cool.
that's a good start, I guess.
Well, I mean, Sullivan was director of DCR, now he's Board of Energy or something like that. But still, I think he still lives in Westfield, so he's got roots,
Right.
you know?
Okay, so the last If you're done with DOT, just the last thing I had on his membership, just quick update, both Karen, it's been a long time, both Karen and Colby, for reasons of other bandwidth, basically, have had to resign from the committee. Karen did so quite some time ago. Colby did in a conversation with me just 2 weeks ago, and I emailed him about this meeting. He has a wife who's on call every other night, 2 young kids at home.
It's not easy.
Yeah. So I'm gonna, you need to, I mean, just you, because you're the chair, so I just have to do is just make sure that they post, they being, God, who's our town clerk?
Ginny.
Is it Ginny Domino?
No, she
She
retired.
retired. We do not know who it is.
Okay, so the town clerk
What's her name? I spoke to her a few days ago, and of course,
needs to post 2 positions, and I'll just give Colby a nudge to make sure. I know Karen
She's
submitted a
nice.
resignation. I'll give Colby a nudge.
The assistant step up?
So,
Yes.
And
is
I'll-
it Jen Day?
No. Wait a minute.
I don't know her name. I can fix her.
I will also dig into my list of people I've spoken with over the last couple of years,
Where was Lucy?
and we can talk about that, whether we want,
I might be
us
mixing
to
up
approach them.
roles here.
Absolutely. If you've talked to them and they should express interest, that would be,
Jennifer's the
maybe
financial.
just circling back and see if
right?
there's
She's
still.
the new-
What we really need is a lawyer, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
And didn't she take over for,
That was, I mean, Karen did that for us.
Oh,
with,
right.
You know, I thought very good grace.
That makes sense.
okay,
So that's what, assessor?
no, it's collector.
So-
Collector, all right.
So that means
So-
the new one over here. Is that Lucy? I'm over in the,
I'm not sure. I don't come here that often.
Could be.
that's just typical of how names get scrambled for me. I was never good at them to start with, and it's not getting better as the years go by.
Maybe there.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet we've all experienced significant cognitive decline since this project started.
Yeah, it's been a little while. So we all have grayer hair.
Oh, man. Okay, we'll get,
Heck, when I started with it, I didn't have kids.
I didn't know that was a side effect of this thing.
I don't think it was a side effect of this.
Oh, so just coincidence, yeah, I see.
Yeah.
That's better.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm not saying anything.
so apropos membership, we're in the market for a lawyer. Preferably somebody who does real estate. If you bump into someone at the Big Y who has a big L on their forehead.
That's the way to win them.
Just make sure it's the Southampton one, not the.
This is where you ask if there's any new business.
Any new business before we use the A word?
That would be the adios words.
Yeah, adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion's been made. Vote.
Aye.
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 Worked.
Shut that thing off.
Or turn it on.
One or the other.
Change it.
Give you a
It does, but it doesn't. The one thing it doesn't say is green is on and red is off. Or
Gotcha.
so.
Yep.
So if we stick to the schedule, we'll see each other, what,